Welcome to the deep dive. If you're looking for a shortcut to, really get to the heart of the modern global Krishna movement, you are in exactly the right place.
Yeah. Today, we are immersing ourselves in the life of a truly monumental figure, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur.
He was the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, which is huge in itself, but he was just an incredible force in his own right.
Absolutely. And our mission today is really to get into why this one person was known by two seemingly contradictory titles. First, the Living Encyclopedia, which sounds so calm and
Oh,
scholarly.
very serene.
And then Nrsimha Guru, the Lion Guru, which is, well, it's ferocious.
That tension is exactly it. The scholar and the lion. That's what makes his story so fascinating. We've got a whole stack of sources here that show how he just completely revolutionized spiritual outreach in the early 20th century.
He used everything, cutting-edge printing presses, cars, motorboats.
All while keeping the philosophy completely pure and ancient. It's a masterclass in synthesis.
It really is. We'll
Yeah.
be looking at how he used that immense intellectual weight to just dismantle dogmatism, build institutions, and embrace the modern world through this very specific philosophical lens.
Okay, let's dive in. Let's start with that foundation, that authority,
Right.
the Living Encyclopedia. Where does a title like that even come from?
Well, you have to start at his birth. He was born February 6, 1874, in Sri Kshetra Dhammajagannatha Puri.
And his father was Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was already this giant of philosophy and reform. So he's born right into the intellectual heart of a movement.
Exactly. And the sources are all unanimous on this. His intellect wasn't something that developed over time. It was practically immediate.
What do you mean immediate?
We're talking about a child who mastered the Vedas, who memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita by heart, and all this while actively helping his father with his own very deep philosophical writing.
Wow. So he wasn't just reading books. He was like living inside this giant library of Eastern philosophy from day one.
Precisely. That's how he earned the title, the Living Encyclopedia. Because in an age where spiritual authority was so contested, he didn't just have opinions. He had instant, deep scriptural backing for every single point he made.
But the knowledge wasn't just for show, right? It was for a purpose. What was the central battle he was preparing for?
The primary fight was against two things that had really weakened Vaishnavism in India at the time.
Okay.
First, there were all these internal philosophical deviations, ideas that had sort of watered down the original teachings. And second, rampant casteism.
We hear that word a lot, casteism, but what did it look like in the religious sphere he was operating in?
He was this idea that spiritual leadership, the right to be a guru or teach scripture, was based purely on your birthright, your family line.
So it didn't matter if you knew anything or had any character.
Not to them.
Yeah.
And he vigorously preached against that. He argued that authority must come from spiritual realization and a true understanding of the philosophy, the Siddhanta, not your genetics.
That is a direct challenge to the entire power structure of the time. He was essentially saying, your family name means nothing if you don't embody the knowledge.
Yes, a huge challenge. And he paired it with this unifying vision. He used his scholarly platform to publish the core teachings of all four major Vaisnava lineages, the Sampradayas.
To find common ground.
To find common ground and show that the ultimate conclusion was consistent: devotion to Krishna. He used scholarship to elevate the whole debate.
Okay, so that depth of knowledge brings us right back to that tension to his second title. If he was the Living Encyclopedia in private, he became Nrsimha Guru, the Lion Guru in public.
He did. And you have to understand the context of the name Nrsimha. Nrsimha is the fierce half-man, half-lion form of God. His specific job is to protect truth and destroy hypocrisy.
So people called him that because his preaching was seen as this relentless defense of the truth.
A fearless, powerful delivery of the Vaisnava Siddhanta.
Yeah. And the anecdotes from the sources are just amazing. I love the detail that his opponents, the so-called Mayavadis, would actually avoid him on the street.
It's a fantastic detail, isn't it? For those who don't know, Mayavadis follow a monistic, impersonal philosophy. They think God is ultimately just an energy and the world is an illusion, or Maya.
And Bhaktisiddhanta was the champion of the personalist view.
The ultimate champion.
Right.
The supreme is a person, Krishna. And the sources say these monists would literally cross the street to avoid debating him. They knew they couldn't stand up to the force of his arguments.
He wasn't just having debates, he was winning the intellectual war. And that translated into, massive organizational growth. 64 Gaudiya math temples across India.
I mean, 64 temples.
Yeah.
That's a That's an incredible number. It shows unbelievable leadership.
Mm.
And he didn't stop in India's borders. He immediately started opening centers internationally: Burma, England, Germany.
Right in the middle of the colonial era. But that kind of growth, challenging the establishment like he did, that must have created a lot of opposition.
Oh, tremendous opposition. A perfect example is when he excavated the Yoga Pitha in Sri Mayapur. This is the actual appearance place of Lord Caitanya.
A hugely important site. So what was the conflict?
He faced what the sources bluntly describe as the money-hungry caste Goswamis of Navadvipa.
So these were the groups whose authority was based on their family lineage.
Exactly, and they were profiting from it. They saw his effort to excavate the true birthplace and build a beautiful temple there as a direct threat to their authority and, well, their income.
So it was a fight over who gets to be the steward of these sacred spaces, the people who claim it by birth or the person who proves it through knowledge and devotion.
And he won. He built the temple and reclaimed the physical heart of the movement. It was a decisive victory.
And that determination, that fearlessness, it leads us right into how he embraced the modern world. He knew you needed modern tools to fight a modern battle.
That's the key. And it's all rooted in this one philosophical principle, yukta vairagya.
Okay, so break that down for us. Yukta vairagya. Traditionally, renunciation or vairagya means rejecting the world, rejecting technology, right?
That's the common understanding, yes.
Yeah.
Outright rejection. No cars, no fine clothes, no modern tools. But yukta vairagya means proper renunciation. It's the idea of using the material energy, Maya, in service to Krishna.
So instead of rejecting it, you sanctify it, you use it.
You use it. He understood that if Krishna owns everything, then every piece of technology is his energy. This was a profound shift from just being an ascetic to being an active, engaged spiritual revolutionary.
And his most famous use of this was in printing. He had 3 big printing presses, and he gave them this amazing name.
He called them his brat mridangas, his great drums.
Great drums, I love that. Mridanga is the traditional clay drum used in chanting, which is loud and local.
Exactly. So by calling the presses his great drums, he was saying that the printed word was his new, louder, more far-reaching instrument to proclaim the truth. It was a total game changer.
And he didn't stop there. He launched a spiritual daily newspaper, the Nadia Prakash.
Yeah, and when someone asked him why on earth he needed a daily spiritual paper, his answer just moved. It reveals everything about his mindset.
What did he say?
He said, and this is a quote, "If an insignificant city can produce 5 daily newspapers, then why can't we publish a newspaper every second about the eternal, ever-fresh transcendental activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead?"
Wow. He saw that spiritual news had to compete on the same 2047 playing field as material news. He was basically inventing a transcendental media ecosystem.
He really was, and he used other tech too. He staged these big, free theistic exhibits with dioramas. And get this, he even used animated dolls to depict the pastimes of Krishna and Lord Caitanya.
Animated dolls. In the early 1900s, that's incredible.
It was multimedia before the word existed. But maybe the most radical thing he did? It had to do with his monks, his sannyasis.
Go on.
In India, there was a huge cultural taboo, a rule that prevented monks from crossing the sea.
Yeah.
It was thought to pollute them. He completely defied it. He allowed his sannyasis to wear tailored coats, to ride in cars and motorboats, and, this is a big one, to travel across the sea to Europe to preach.
That must have been absolutely scandalous at the time. He was prioritizing the mission over the dogma.
The mission always came first. It was the ultimate expression of yukta vairagya. True purity is internal, not dependent on what car you're riding in or which ocean you cross.
It all comes back to the ideas, so it makes sense that he'd pour so much energy into publishing the core scriptures. Let's talk about his scholarly contributions.
His publishing output was just massive. He put out authoritative versions of all the critical texts, the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and his personal favorite, Sri Caitanya Charitamrita.
Which is the core text for his entire movement, documenting the life of Lord Caitanya.
It is. It's the highest philosophical work in the tradition, and he made this very specific prediction about it.
What was that?
He said that one day, foreigners would take so much pleasure in reading it that they would learn the Bengali language just to relish the original words of its author.
A prediction that has absolutely come true all over the world.
Completely. And his central message in all these books was consistent with his fight against casteism. He advocated for Devi Varnashrama, a social system based on a person's actual qualities, not their birth.
So we have the living encyclopedia, the lion guru, the technological visionary. But if you had to boil it down to his single greatest, most enduring contribution, what would it be?
I think the sources are very clear on this. His greatest contribution was a person, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada,
His disciple.
his disciple, who he personally and specifically ordered to preach Krishna consciousness in English.
That one command coming from this man who was all about using modern means to spread an ancient message. That was the seed.
That was the seed of the entire global movement we see today. It ensured everything he fought for, the philosophical purity, the revolutionary methods would be carried forward.
And when Prabhupada was later asked to describe his spiritual master, he didn't use all these grand titles we've been discussing.
No, he said something much simpler and much more profound.
He said, what can I say? He was a Vaikuntha man.
A Vaikuntha man. A resident of the spiritual world. It's the perfect description, isn't it? It means that all his actions in this world, the temples, the presses, the debates, were just manifestations of a higher spiritual reality. They weren't bound by this world's rules.
What an incredible life. He was the figure who truly bridged that ancient authoritative tradition with the urgent needs of the modern world.
And for those who want to connect it all back, the sources say that in the eternal spiritual world, he serves as Nayanamani Manjari. And here, his sacred memorials, his Pushpa Samadhis, are at Radha Kunda and Radha Damodara. It's a reminder that all that power was rooted in pure, eternal devotion.
Which gives us a fantastic final thought for you, our listener, to think about. We saw how this lion guru used the principle of Yukta Vairagya to take the technology of his day, the printing press, and use it to leapfrog his message into the next generation. So, what are the great drums, the Brahmadangas of our time? What are the technologies and platforms that traditionalists might be rejecting right now? And who is going to be...
With these really powerful terms like spiritual general and, maybe most famously, the lion guru.
the Simha Guru.
So our mission today is to understand why. Why is he considered this? This revolutionary force, the architect who basically laid the whole foundation for the modern worldwide movement.
It's impossible to overstate his role.
You might know about the temples or the chanting, but the structure, the integrity it all rests on.
Comes from him.
It all comes back to him.
And what's so fascinating is that his mission wasn't sudden. It wasn't an accident. It was, you could say, inherited, almost predetermined. Well, he was born in 1874, and you have to understand the context. Traditional Hinduism was facing huge pressures, both from inside and out.
Okay.
And his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was this incredible figure, a high-ranking magistrate, but also a profound mystic, he had already prophesied a global spiritual revolution.
He predicted it.
He literally wrote that people from all nations would one day come together and chant the names of Krishna.
Wow.
And when his son, who was then named Bimala Prasad, was born, he identified him. He said, this is the one. This is the acharya, the one who will teach by example and carry out that very prophecy.
So from the very beginning, the scope was global.
The scope was global, but the immediate challenge was right there at home.
So he was literally born into this immense mission. But the first job wasn't, global outreach.
No, not at all.
It was philosophical defense. Let's unpack that.
Oh.
Our sources show he was an intellectual titan, prodigious scholar.
Oh, absolutely. He mastered the vast Vedic literature, but also fields that might surprise you, like astronomy and mathematics.
But it was his intellectual ferocity in defending the purity of the tradition that earned him that title, right? The Simha Guru, the lion.
Yeah.
So why was that lion-like defense so necessary? I mean, who was he fighting? What was at stake?
Well, the stakes were incredibly high. It was the very survival and integrity of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition itself.
The path coming from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Exactly. And he wasn't fighting outsiders. Not at first. He was fighting corruption within the house.
Okay, so what did that corruption look like?
It had fallen into two major, really debilitating problems that were turning a vibrant philosophy into a closed-off and sometimes hypocritical cult. First, there was rampant casteism.
Meaning your spiritual qualification was based on your birth.
Your birthright, your family lineage, not your character, not your devotion. And that immediately contradicts the whole original spirit of Sri Chaitanya's movement, which was so inclusive.
Incredibly democratic, really.
Exactly. The core principle was always that pure devotion, bhakti, transcends all those material labels, caste, creed, whatever.
Right.
So this birthright system was just choking the missionary spirit. And second, the tradition was diluted.
How so?
By excessive ritualism, philosophical compromises, Sometimes it was just emotional fanaticism with no scriptural basis or practices that were just motivated by money.
So he looked around and saw a tradition that was introverted, it was diluted, and it had completely lost its missionary spirit.
Precisely. And his scholarship became the lion's roar against all that decay. His critical contribution was to fearlessly challenge these corrupted practices using the very same texts they claimed to follow.
He used their own books against them.
He did. He reestablished the pure, rational philosophical teachings, the idea that liberation comes from purifying your heart and through active service, not because of who your father was or what rituals you perform.
And that commitment to philosophical purity, that refusal to compromise, you can see that so clearly in ISKCON today.
It's the foundation.
The emphasis on rigorous study, on academic defense, he cleaned house, he secured the intellectual foundation.
He did. He combined this uncompromising philosophy with just impeccable personal conduct. He didn't just argue a higher standard, he lived it.
Which makes the shift from that defense to actually building an organization even more compelling.
He had the purity. Now he needed the vehicle.
Let's move to that. In 1918, he establishes the Gaudiya Vaishnavism. This becomes the operational prototype, really the framework, for what would eventually become ISKCON.
It's the blueprint.
So what was so radical about how he systematized the mission?
Yeah.
Because that wasn't like a traditional monastery.
Not at all. He didn't rely on the old models of, passive, hidden monastic life. He engineered a scalable, organized structure designed for the modern age.
And he did it with 3 revolutionary methods.
Yeah. First, he leveraged technology. He called the modern printing press a weapon.
A weapon.
Or the big madonga, the
Yep.
big drum, meaning it could spread the message louder and further than any single person ever could. He saw technology as an essential tool.
And what was he publishing?
Everything. He was relentless. Magazines like The Gaudiya and The Harmonist, books, philosophical tracts. The content was sophisticated, dense arguments mixed with accessible instructions.
So he flooded the public sphere with this pure literature.
Pushing back against the corruption, not just with lectures, but with mass-produced, verifiable scriptural evidence. It was a complete shift.
Taking the movement out of the monasteries and onto the streets, into the presses. What was the second method?
The second was aggressive public missionary activity.
Which was unheard of.
Completely. Before him, the tradition was very insular. You didn't go out and debate or try to convert people. He changed all that.
So what did he do?
He sent out his disciples, trained them in philosophy and conduct, and had them go lecture in universities, colleges, public squares all across India.
And that must have been a shock at the time.
It was. Seeing these men in traditional saffron robes and engaging the public intellectually, not just retreating into a forest somewhere, it was a totally new concept.
And that public outreach is now, it's synonymous with ISKCON's image worldwide, isn't
The
it?
bold Sankirtan, the book distribution, it's all rooted right there.
And a third organizational pillar.
That was establishing a real physical network, a centralized network. He founded 64 mathas, or centers, across India.
As he four.
Right. And they weren't just temples. They were training centers, publishing houses, launch pads for the missionary work. They were headquarters for the army of soldiers he was building.
So he wasn't just a philosopher, he was an organizational architect.
Absolutely. He was building the railway tracks. He organized the army. He provided the philosophical weapons. He created the map for global travel.
But the final critical push that needed a specific instrument.
Yes, it did.
And this brings us to that defining moment. This is where we connect the dots, directly from the Lion Guru to the founding of the global movement we see today.
The key interaction.
It's 1922 in Calcutta. A young, educated man named Abhay Charan Day shows up to meet the great spiritual general.
And that meeting, that single interaction, is really the genesis of ISKCON's entire global reach.
So Abhay Charan Day, he was already philosophically inclined, he was educated.
Yes, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur saw his potential immediately. But he didn't just give him general advice. He gave him a direct, specific, lifelong instruction, a mandate.
What was it?
He told him, "You are an educated young man. You should go to the Western countries and preach the message of Lord Caitanya in the English language."
Wow. In 1922. That is an astonishing command.
It really is.
Why the focus on the West? On English? There's so much work to be done in India itself.
Because he was a strategist. He understood that for the revolution to be truly global, truly sustainable, it had to penetrate the dominant spheres of influence, technology, finance, communication.
And at that time, that was the English-speaking world.
English was becoming the world's lingua franca, and the West controlled modern travel and communication. He was essentially telling his disciple to capture the technological nerve center of the globe.
And that young man, Apaicharan Day, would of course spend decades preparing.
Decades.
And finally, at 69 years old, he travels to the West and becomes His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada.
And the implication of that one order, it really can't be overstated.
Every single thing.
Every temple, every book you see being distributed, every public gathering, it's all the direct fulfillment of that one order given in 1922. ISKCON is the fruit of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's desire.
Made manifest by Srila Prabhupada.
Exactly.
So, okay, if that order was the seed, let's look at the movement today. How is his influence woven into the DNA of ISKCON? Because it's not just historical reverence, is it? It's a living model.
It really is. It's codified into how the movement functions. You can see 4 major concrete elements.
Okay, what's the first one?
Number 1 is the philosophical and academic emphasis. The intense focus ISKCON places on scriptural study, logic, intellectual argument. That comes directly from the Lion Guru's scholarly revival.
He demanded intellectual integrity as the foundation.
Absolutely. Then number 2. The uncompromising missionary spirit.
We talk about that. The bold public outreach.
The street chanting, the book distribution, that active, unapologetic mood. His whole thing was that philosophical truth is meant to be shared aggressively and widely, not hidden away.
Okay, what's 3?
3 is the continuous embrace of technology and modern tools. He used the printing press.
Right, the arsenal of the modern world.
Following that principle, Srila Prabhupada used vinyl records, jet travel, mass market publishing, and today you see the movement using social media, global conferencing, even podcasts like this one.
All based on that principle that any tool can be used.
Any modern instrument should be used in service of a divine purpose.
And the final point, the one that really shaped the global movement.
The 4th point is the absolute rejection of casteism and sectarianism.
That character trumps birth.
Exactly. His teaching that pure devotion, not birth, is the sole qualifier for spiritual standing is foundational to ISKCON's acceptance of people from any background, any ethnicity, any nationality, into spiritual leadership roles.
That is an incredibly powerful legacy, especially for the early 20th century.
He was breaking down huge societal barriers to establish that principle.
So let's transition now to how his life is observed.
Yeah.
He left this world on December 31st, 1936.
Yes, and that day is observed as Tirupava, a major day of reflection.
But it's not about mourning.
No, what's crucial is that it isn't treated as a day of mourning his physical departure. It's primarily a day for reflection, for rededication to the mission he started.
A day to review your own commitments.
That's right. We honor him by remembering his contribution and, critically, by reading his essays and instructions. It's a moment to remember that we are, in a spiritual sense, soldiers in the army he organized.
And the best way to honor a general is to execute the command. So, to summarize his achievement, it seems he cleared the jungle of misconception, fighting all that dilution and corruption, and then he laid the sophisticated railway tracks for the worldwide movement to travel on.
That's a perfect way to put it. Without his scholarship, his administrative strength, and his radical vision, the global spread of Krishna consciousness just would not have happened in the 20th century.
It's that clear.
And we are all, in a spiritual sense, the grandchildren of this mighty lion of devotion, which it raises an important question, I think, for you, for the listener.
Go on.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta organized this army of missionaries. He focused on leveraging modern tools, the printing press, public lecturing, to achieve his goals. So the question becomes, how do you see your own knowledge, your professional skills, or the technologies you use every day?
Whether it's digital communication, media production, anything.
Right. How could that be channeled to serve a greater philosophical purpose? How can we continue his legacy of that kind of organizational application today?
That challenge brings his historical mission right into our lives, right now, asking us to apply those same principles of organization and leverage.
Exactly.
Thank you. This has been an incredible deep dive into the revolutionary life and foundational legacy of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It's absolutely clear that ISKCON is built on his daring blueprint.
It has been an honor to share the depth of his contribution.
Let us conclude with the traditional offering of humble obeisances to this pivotal figure, the Lion Guru, whose command inspired a global spiritual revolution.
Hare Krishna.
Nam Vishnupada Paramahamsa acharya astu tarasata Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Nama. Hare Krishna.